Looking after this meeting, but when the suggestion was made that who was going to do it, everybody else ran out of the room and left me there. So here I am. If you don't know me, my name is Colin Palmer. I'm the chair of the Powell River Regional Board, and this issue for this community is obviously very serious. There was a meeting at 5 o'clock tonight with community leaders and stakeholders who had an hour and 45 minutes with these two gentlemen, and now you're here today for the public part of this situation. It's my pleasure tonight to introduce to you the two people who are the Commission, Gordon Macatee on my right and Sheldon Stoylan on his right, and these two gentlemen are the Commission for the BC Ferries. And what they want to do tonight is to get as much information from you about your circumstances or people you know regarding ferries and the effects that they're having on your lives. And my purpose is to make sure this meeting finishes at 10 o'clock and that in that time period that you all get a chance, as many of you as possible anyway, get a chance to make your points. I'm going to be a bit miserable with people who go on and on and on. It's not fair to the other people who are waiting to speak. So I want you to make your points and let the commissioners hear it and then move on from there. So if you've got 2 points you want to make, that would be great. If you've got 5, well, okay, the rest of us might not be too thrilled about that. Once the Commissioner has made his comments, his assistant, Don, is going to be handing out some numbered tickets. So instead of you having to line up at these microphones, just put your hand up. He will give you a ticket. Number 1 obviously speaks first, and we carry on from there. So you don't have to line up at those mics. You'll know, a bit like when you go to the hospital to have the blood tests, pick up a ticket, you know. It's a new one on me. I've never done it before, but we'll try. So enough about me. Gordon Macatee, welcome to Powell River, and please carry on.
So you can all hear me? Before I start to talk to you about ferry things, I just want to share with you a discovery I made today. Before I did work for the ferry world, I worked for the Olympics, and one of my jobs was to oversee construction of all podiums. And Powell River donated the wood for the podium that was used at the Richmond Oval, and I was downstairs in this facility earlier and found the plaque that we had created and set up here. So I've never seen it mounted, and it was a real pleasure to remember that this community made such a great contribution to that project. So this is my chance to say thanks to Powell River for a previous thing I got to work on. So today we want to listen to you more than talk to you. I'm going to make a few comments, and because of the size of the group, it's going to be hard for this to be, conversation, which a lot of the smaller sessions have been. And my preference is going to be to talk less and listen more. If you want me to respond to a particular point you're making, please ask me to do that. But otherwise, for the most part, we're going to listen and take notes and hopefully reflect what we hear from you when we get to the point of making recommendations. So I want to start by introducing Sheldon Stoylan, the Deputy Commissioner. Sheldon's been in the position for a little over 3 years, so he really knows a lot about the Ferry Commission and the ferry system. I was appointed in May, so 3 months, and he's 3 years, so you can imagine who really knows more about this file than the other person. I want to start by explaining what the Commission is, and most importantly, what it isn't. We don't work for the company, the Ferry Corporation, and we don't work for the BC government. We are independent, and we were appointed to these positions to administer the Coastal Ferries Act, to implement the price cap regulatory model, and we report to the whole legislature. So that's both the Liberals, the NDP, and the Independents, and because we're independent, we have the ability to deliver a report that is going to reflect what we hear, which is going to include recommendations that we'll formulate as we consider what we've heard and what we learned. And of course, it will be up to the government to take whatever recommendations we make and decide what to do with them. But they have given us the mandate to do this review. In fact, it required legislation to allow us to do the review. And so there's a very significant commitment to this process. And we're very hopeful that the recommendations we make are going to be received well. So the main role of the Commission is the price cap process. And price caps are a light-handed form of regulating utilities and ferries, airports, rail companies. And the light-handed nature of it is basically the setting of a price cap above which the company cannot go. But below that level, they have lots of flexibility to manage the business and to be flexible and innovative and so on. It was a very odd time, though, for me to become the commissioner. The price caps occur once every 4 years, and this is that year. And the legislation lays out very clearly how the process unfolds. And on March 31st of this year, the commissioner, my predecessor, was required to produce a preliminary price cap decision, which was then to be followed by a public consultation period, and then a final decision on the price caps at the end of September. So coming into this role in the middle of that process was a bit unusual. The Act is very prescriptive in terms of how the price cap is determined, and it's based on the company providing its cost projections for the next 4-year period, its ridership projections, its capital plans, and then there's a provision in the Act for the calculation of a return on equity allowance for the company. So the numbers that come out are a result of a fairly prescriptive process, and the numbers that came out at the preliminary point were quite large. 8.23% for the north and minor routes per year, and 4.12% for the majors. And, to be clear, this was somewhat less, considerably less than what the company felt it needed. So when I arrived in the position, we were at the stage of receiving public input, and the public input was very, very loud and, very clear. These numbers are very large. People are very, very concerned about the magnitude of the potential increases. And so we were, reflecting on what we should be thinking and doing based on what we were hearing. In 2010, something significant changed in terms of the work that the Commission does. A bill was passed in the legislature which added... Do we all need to run outside? Somebody's phone. A bill was passed in the legislature that added a new requirement to the Commission's work that required us to consider the interests of ferry users. And that requirement wasn't defined. So as we looked at the Act, which as I've already said is very prescriptive, doesn't allow for a lot of latitude or independent sort of decisions. It's a formula that's followed. We weren't really very clear on, after considering those interests, what we could do other than to produce the numbers that would come out. And because we were in this process and we're faced with making a decision that would stand for 4 years, we felt we needed to get some direction from government. What did it mean? What is it defined to be, this idea of considering the interests of ferry users? What tools do we have to implement whatever consideration we have come up with. And so we felt it was quite urgent that we get that direction before we had to make that final decision. So on the 13th of May, we wrote to the Minister of Transportation and asked, first of all, for clarification about that requirement, and we also asked then for some clarification around some 20 plus aspects of the legislation that would give us guidance on how we could act after we had considered those interests. So the Minister wrote back to us very quickly and agreed to that a review is appropriate. But in order to give us the mandate to do this, they had to pass legislation. Bill 14 was introduced and passed this spring, and it gave us the mandate, and more importantly, it gave us some breathing time. What we didn't want was to do a review that would come out with recommendations after the 4-year decision had been made. And so the government imposed the first year of the price cap decision, and we'll then come back in and make the remaining 3-year decision, but with the benefit of the review and the possibility that the legislation may be adjusted to give us more tools or to give more clarity to what's expected. So the bill passed on the 1st of June. Sheldon and I had our first public meeting on the 6th of June, so we've been getting busy quickly. We've been up and down the Central Coast and the North Coast, out to Haida Gwaii. We visited the north end of Vancouver Island, and we decided to focus on those areas first to ensure that we wouldn't have weather issues that would prevent us from getting to those communities later in the fall. So we're now at the stage of starting our visits to the southern communities. We were in Gibson's yesterday, and we're here, so these are the first 2 communities on our southern excursion. We have 2 streams to this review that we're doing. The first is these public consultations. At this point, we've probably had something like 30 to 35 sessions with people who live in ferry-dependent communities, with regional governments and local government, and many other groups that have asked to talk to us. We'll continue these meetings through probably the middle of October. And at the same time, we've also engaged an international expert on the subject of price caps and the regulation of ferry systems. And what we want them to do is compare our price cap model with models that are in place elsewhere, to tell us what other people have discovered that makes their systems work better, that better address the needs of the people that use their systems. And so, for example, we'll be looking at the Washington ferry system, the Alaskan system, the Atlantic Canadian, Scotland, and the Australian ferry governance models. And as well, we'll be looking at price cap models that are used for rail in the UK, for example, and airport administration in other parts of the world. So we want to learn, the best that's out there. And after we've heard from those expert folks, we're going to then lay over top of that what we hear from the people who live in British Columbia, use the ferry system, and understand better than anyone how it works, how it affects you as individuals, and how it affects your communities. So we're going to be looking at a number of things. I'm going to mention at least a few of them quickly. The first thing we want to do is define this idea of consideration of ferry users' interests. And we think it's a 3-part question. The first part of the question is, who are the ferry users? And there's a narrow view that is the people who actually ride on ferries. But a broader view includes people who have businesses that depend on ferry travelers, people who sell products or produce products that are sold in ferry-dependent communities, people who may not actually ride the ferries but depend on them to bring family members to where they live, and many others. So it's a very important question, is this a wide or a narrow definition of who is the user? Second part of the question is, what are the user's interests? And what we've heard very clearly is there's a very significant interest around affordability and predictability of the fares. But we've also heard a lot about the importance of the commitment of the company to the sort of the economic well-being of communities, the businesses that depend on ferry traffic, and the importance of schedules and the linking of ferry schedules with airlines and other ferry systems and even other ferry routes within the BC system. So, the second part is we want to define the interest. And then the last, and for us at least, the important piece is, what does it mean to consider something? Does it mean, think about it? Does it mean advance notification? Does it mean consultation? Does it mean something even, more than that? And how and who should decide what level of consideration is necessary or appropriate in any given circumstance? We also want to try to define the ideas of reasonableness and affordability. Again, we've heard lots and lots of comments about the unaffordability of current fares in many areas and on many routes. Very few people have suggested that ferries should be free. So where is the affordable, reasonable place? How do you calculate it? And how do you know you continue to be there over time? We want to define financial sustainability for the operator. It's the overriding principle in the legislation right now, and again, it's not well defined, and a better understanding of what it is and how we apply it will certainly help us to do this job better. The Act has presently got 6 overriding principles, and they are that priority be given to the financial sustainability of the company, that the company take a commercial approach to its operations, that the company seek out alternate service providers, that it minimize its expenses, that it undertake to eliminate cross-subsidization between route groups, and that a user pay principle be applied. So, part of our question and something that we're interested in hearing from you on is, are those the right principles? Are they accomplishing what the ferry system needs to accomplish? And if the answer isn't yes, then what do you need? How should they be changed? What additional principles might need to be considered to deliver what you need from your ferry service? We want to look into whether the company is sufficiently accountable for serving its customers well. Does the company behave in a business-like manner, as is suggested through those principles I just mentioned? Does the company consult and communicate effectively with its communities and with its riders? Does it contribute in a positive way to the economic well-being of the communities that it serves? So, these are some of the kinds of questions that we're asking and that we want to hear from people on, and there are many others that we certainly welcome. We plan to post a number of discussion topics on our website, which will kind of frame the issues that I've just been discussing and invite people to comment. I urge you to visit our website. It's bcferrycommission.com, and comment as often as you wish. Don't feel like you only get one crack at this. We'd like to hear from you on any and all topics that you feel that you'd like to contribute. You can write to us, you can email us, you can tweet us, and if there's any other ways you'd like to communicate with us, then tell us that too. But we definitely want to hear from you. If anybody tonight brought written notes or submissions, I'd like to make sure you drop them off. Don is in the front. He's going to be moving around in a few minutes, so if you have anything you'd like to get to us, he'll pick them up from you. The end product is going to be a set of recommendations to the Minister around potential changes to the Ferries Act. It's up to government, of course, to decide what legislation and whether they will accept, any or all of our recommendations. But I do feel that it's important to remember that government went to some significant lengths to make it possible for us to do this by bringing in legislation to give us this mandate. The minister's been very sincere, very interested, and very supportive in having us do this work. We realize that there are challenges. We realize that there are costs rising in the ferry system, and we realize there are constraints in government around dollars and resources, and that it's a tough economy. But we also realize that people who live in communities like this one really utterly depend on the ferry service, and that we need to find a model that serves you well. We're looking for solutions. When we get to the end, we need to make recommendations. So I invite you to tell us your concerns, but if you can, tell us what you think the solution may be too. This is a unique opportunity. Governments don't review their legislation that often. This is, we're 8 years now since the Coastal Ferries Act was written. I think it's a very appropriate time to be reviewing the Act, but I suspect it'll be a while before it gets done again. So we need to seize the opportunity. I urge you to step up and tell us what you think. Ask questions if you wish, but do try to help us find solutions. I think it's going to require some serious thought, some creativity, and maybe some thinking outside the ferry. Sheldon, did you have anything you wanted to add before we start to turn it over? Okay, so Sheldon's, as I said, the Assistant Commissioner, Deputy Commissioner at least, and he'll probably be answering many of the questions. So between the two of us, we'll do our best. So Don, going to leap up now. He's got some cards in his hand. Anybody that wants to speak, grab a card, and we've got 2 mics, and we look forward to listening.
We'll call this microphone.
Nicholas has something he wants to give me, apparently. And I guess I should say, by the way, I mentioned that we do report to the whole legislature, and 2 members of the legislature are here today. So Nicholas Simon and Gary Kuhn, the ferry critic, is somewhere in the audience. Want to wave your arm? Gary in the front too.
I just want to quickly say thank you very much to the Commission for making the trip. We had a really good meeting in Gibson's, and I expect they'll learn a lot here as well. This is a box of letters from Upper Sunshine Coast residents, 2,570 of them. So, my goal, we summarize them. Maggie and the volunteers at the office are also here, thank them. We're going to summarize that and offer them as a written submission, which everyone has the ability to do. I just want to say that the Commission is here because of communities like Powell River and the Lower Sunshine Coast that kept urging, through me and through letters and through petitions, and to get the government to do what they said they were hoping to do in 2003, and that was to bring stability and fair ferries. So this is a good day. This is an opportunity to make some positive contributions, and I just want to say thank you, and thank you all for taking a beautiful summer evening to come here. So I hope you enjoy the meeting. These will be going to the Minister when the House convenes on October the 4th.
Okay, I'm going to call this microphone number 1, and you've got ticket number 1 there, and this one microphone will be number 2, so whoever's got ticket number 2, you can line up over there. So number 1.
My name is Helen Evans, and I have lived in Powell River for 45 years. One of the things you mentioned was that under the Ferry Act, that expenses should be reasonable. I don't think that was the word you used, but you spoke quite quickly and I didn't quite catch it. Something about expenses. How can expenses be reasonable when bonuses are given to people for doing their job? When the head of the ferries gets an excessive salary, much more than he's getting an absolutely ridiculous pension, $300,000 a year. And by making it under the Ferry Act a sort of semi-private company, you have to pay HST and the fuel, and that must be tremendous. One of the things I would suggest, that the only way we're going, and another thing, we have 2 commissioners, plus we're going to have a person traveling here, there and everywhere to tell us what we already know, that we're paying far too much. The only thing I would suggest that would help us here is for the Ferry Act to be dissolved and back to our permanent corporation.
Thank you. Okay, the Commissioner's listening. He's making the point. We had a meeting earlier on, and he's making notes, and they're not ignoring those points just being made. Number 2.
Hi, my name is Patricia Martinek. I was born and raised in Powell River, and I've been running the ferries for the better part of 50 years now. What I've observed is, over the years, is basically a deterioration in the ferry service in general. That includes food service. The ferry that we have now has no basic cafeteria. It's just sandwiches and food that you can, if you call it that, food you can heat up in a microwave. We used to have a proper cafeteria on the ferry where you could get sandwiches and breakfast and hot dogs and stuff, and I don't quite understand why they got rid of the cafeteria, because they seem to have the same number of staff on board, so that doesn't really make any sense to me. Also, the number of sailings have decreased over the years. I just remember when I was younger, at some point there were actually 2 ferries that sailed out of Sultry Bay, and wow, that was amazing. You know, we actually had ferries every 2 hours, and now we're lucky sometimes if we get a ferry every 4 hours, and who knows sometimes. I also don't understand the loading procedures. It doesn't seem to matter what time you get at the terminal. You're loaded onto the ferry, and then you can be put anywhere, and then you'll get off long after cars that arrive after you get off, and that can make a difference as to what time you arrive at Langdale, and that might make a difference as to whether or not you get on the ferry at Langdale, and that doesn't seem to make any sense to me, because I can't understand how a difference between a car and a car affects the weight distribution. I understand sometimes between semis and trailers and things, but why should my car go up here while the other car that looks exactly like my car go over there, and they get off before I do? So I don't understand that. I also don't understand why they can't put some kind of an assured loading thing, or a preferred loading, not even preferred, but a Powell River loading lane at Horseshoe Bay. When you get to Horseshoe Bay and you tell them you're just going through to Powell River, you don't have to pay any more or less. They just put you in a lane that says you're going to Powell River, so you can get on and get off that ferry before all that other Sunshine Coast traffic. We just want to drive into Earl's Cove. We don't want to stop. We don't want to go anywhere. We don't want to be behind 55 RVs that are stopping on the Sunshine Coast. So why is that so difficult? I don't understand that.
Do you want to respond to any of that, Rowan?
You know, I'd like to listen. I'm happy to respond if you want a specific response. But
well, I just want to say I've asked that before. I've said I'm going to Powell River. You know, I'm worried about the traffic. I've been told, tell them down at the gate. And when I've said down at the line, the guy has literally laughed in my face. I've had a ferry worker laugh at me and say, "Are you kidding? You think because you're going to Powell River, you think you're going to get some special consideration on loading? Give me a break.
I think the Commissioner had a number of good points there. If you don't want to respond, are you taking notes, Gordon?
Well, no, it's not that I don't want to respond. I just don't want to take up all the time talking when there's so many people that want to speak.
I'm not quite done. I do have one more. I'm not trying to take up all the time here. I guess what I want to say is fundamentally, we would like to be treated with respect. And we get the feeling that BC Ferries basically looks at us like that they don't treat us with respect. They look at us like we treat our sailings like they're a luxury, and they're not. These are not trips for fun. These are trips of necessity. These are business trips. These are trips to see, or for our children to go to university. These are trips for purposes. This is not a luxury for us. This is our livelihood. These are our lives at stake here. This is not a fun. What is the ultimate goal? Do you want us all to move to the lower mainland? Do you want us to turn into a ghost town, another Ocean Falls? Because by continually driving up the price and driving up the price and driving up the price, what BC Ferries is saying to us is, we don't care about you. You don't matter. This town doesn't matter. And we don't want to become a ghost town. But what else are we to think when it now costs basically $150 return to go to Vancouver? And it wasn't that long ago when a single car and a driver was around $30. And I'm not that old. So all I'm saying is, show us some respect and treat us like intelligent human beings. And don't just throw us under the rug and treat us like we're imbeciles who are going to end up living in a ghost town.
Okay, well, before we get into it, so I did mention what the 6 principles in the Act are, and what you've just discussed is about respect and about consideration for the needs of people that use the system. I guess what I'm looking for is, what do you think the solution is? What do you think the principle that's missing is if you're not getting?
It's not all about money.
Here, here.
That's what all the principles are about. Every one of those principles you espouse is about money. We need to go back to looking at what our needs are as a community. The number of sailings you give us, the number, the kind of ships you give us, the way we're treated as a community. It's not all about the money.
Just to make the point, the Commissioner is not espousing the legislation, it's the government. Number 3.
Hello, my name is Terry Bland. I moved here about 6 years, and coming to Powell River, I thought, wow, what a beautiful place it is, and this is where I want to retire. And I also thought that Highway 101 included the ferry. Now, I know it says on the ferry when they have those little brochures, but, I know I'm blonde, but I used to have dark roots. So, can you explain that to me? Nobody on the Vancouver Island has to pay to, ride up and down their highway. Why do we?
So is your point, just so I'm clear though, is your
But
point...
what I would like, and because of this meeting tonight, I want to offer a solution.
Okay.
Why don't you put residence cards with people's pictures on them so that they know that they live in Powell River and that they can travel at a special rate? Like when I first came here, I thought, well, $40 wasn't bad. So what do you think of that?
It's a suggestion. They have their Coast Saver cards, which do provide some discounts. So talk to me about that for me.
No, that doesn't work because that just ties up a person's money. I mean, after a while, you put the money on the card, and if you don't use it, well, sayonara, your money's gone. So that doesn't another cash cow.
Okay, good
Thanks
points.
for the comment.
Okay, number
Thank you.
4, I think we're up to now.
Trish Coxedge. I have 2 or 3 points. My very first one is that I believe our highways should be public, not private. And we need to I'm in Powell River now, but this morning at 9 o'clock I was in Abbotsford, and I traveled from there to here without stopping for anything but the ferries, and arrived here at 6 o'clock. So it's a long day when you have to go to the lower mainland, and when you have the costs on top of that, it's prohibitive. I'm wondering how the people who travel Highway 1 from Hope, let's say, or even Abbotsford to Vancouver would feel if there was a huge tax put on their roads as there are in ours, because it is our road. My final point is actually a question. I've often wondered this, so I thought this was the time to ask it. I know there are a large number of people who live here who have to travel to Vancouver or to Parksville or Courtenay or wherever, Victoria, for medical treatment. And they get free passes as long as they're not traveling with an RV and a boat on the back. So I would like to know, do you look into, does somebody understand how much money for medical travel comes back to the taxpayer, and how that relates to the lack of medical professionals in our community? What's the tie between the health advisory and the ferries and the travel?
Okay, well, my understanding is that the passes that you're referring to, the TAP, are provided by the Ministry of Health to people, and that the person that received the form submits it to Ferries, and Ferries is paid by the Ministry of Health for the travel. So that's, I think that's how it works, but I'm not sure I understand what question you're asking.
Well, it comes out of it comes out of the taxpayer pocket, but if we had professionals, is there anyone who understands the whole picture? If we had those professionals in our community instead of having to travel all over the province to get medical treatment, how would it balance out as far as ferries? Because ferries are free for those people. What if they didn't have to travel for medical things and professionals were here?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you're asking a very complicated health sector question, and I have a bit of experience in the health sector. It's difficult to get health professionals into a lot of communities, not just ferry-dependent ones. It's partly based on, the ability of the specialist physician to have enough volume of business to achieve their income targets. But it's not a unique problem to your community, and it's certainly not an issue that's a BC Ferry Corporation or Coastal Ferries Act issue that I think I could address through this process.
Okay, but is there a way to find that information out? What's the comparison?
Well, the Ministry of Health can provide you with lots of information about how that program works, how much they put into it each year, what the rules are and the eligibility and so on. I don't know that information off the top of my head, so but I'm sure you can get it.
Number 5.
Hello, my name is Janice Colford. I own Heather Tours. I have a 23-foot bus, and I take primarily seniors to Vancouver Island and the Lower Mainland on tours. And when I started my business 7 years ago, I paid $57.80 for my bus. I now pay $102.35, which is an increase of 71% in 7 years. I had a couple of suggestions. Number 1 is why does BC Ferries run a travel agency in the most expensive square foot per building in all of Vancouver? I don't believe that BC Ferries needs to be a travel agency. I think that we should get down to basics this. You mentioned the word users. I find that word very hard. When in 2003, even before I purchased my business, I remember we used to be passengers. Then we became customers when the Coastal Ferry Act, and I kind of got a bit worried then. And now you're saying we're users. We are passengers. We are using this as our highway. I believe the Coastal Ferry Act should be repealed and it should be returned.
Number 6.
Bob Johnson, I've been here 6 years. In that time, everything's pretty much doubled as far as ferries.
Just speak a little closer to the mic, I think.
We go half as many times now because we just can't afford it. Anyway, we used to have a prorated fare where you pay, a car was one rate and overnight was another. And now everybody pays one rate, and I think that a small car should pay less than an RV. 20-foot RV pays the same. And same, a small trailer behind a car, you're paying a ridiculous rate for that length. Okay, that should be part of the solution. Changing it back to a fare that's fair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 7.
My name's Dino Charniello. I've lived here most of my life. The other speaker over there, he is wrong on his
A little closer to the mic again.
The other speaker is wrong on his prices, and I'll tell you why in a minute. I'm a group of 5 guys that go moose hunting every year for the last, 15, 20 years. Between the 5 of us, we spend in excess of $5,000 a year between ferries, gas, hotels, food, accommodations, and whatever. Well, last year, our ferry rate for 5 of us, 2 trucks, 2 trailers, and that is when they changed the way they charge us. They did away with the overheight, and it just had a certain charge. They charged everybody overheight. For 5 of us, 2 vehicles and 2 trailers, was $525.79. The previous year, the same 5 guys, same trucks, same trailers, was $265. That is a tremendous amount. This letter was written by my partner. He gave it to Bill Cripps last year after we come back from hunting. We submitted it to Surety Bond. We've never heard a response. I will give you his letter that we wrote.
Please do. Yep.
The other one is, we have a saying here, first on, last off at BC Ferries, like the number 2 speaker has said. And when you go to a ferry, you just want to get on. I've been left behind numerous times, like I'm sure most of other people have. But when you go to Vancouver and you got an appointment, you cannot afford to miss your connection. And when you get there 40 minutes early, because that's what they want you to do, and then you're last off because they put you upstairs instead of on the bottom, that's not showing no respect for your customers. Thank you.
Number 8.
My name is John Pettigrew. I've lived in Powell River for about 35 years. And I think most of my suggestions have been covered. I fully agree with the resident card for Powell River travelers that come from
A little closer to the mic, yeah.
Okay, a resident card for people that travel south and coming from Vancouver or going to Vancouver. That one's been covered also. I understand the ferry service is losing money. Well, I can plainly see that with the first ferry running from Little River. 50 cars or trucks is about the basic number on that first ferry. And even the truck drivers complain they got to get up too early. So my suggestion is that they should go back and switch it all back. Powell River first. It's our ferry. And Mr. Hahn may sue me, but we should get rid of him. We can't afford him.
Number 9.
My name is Ray Sketchley. I've been in Powell River since 1964, so I think the first time I came up here it was only about $2 to get on the ferry. 9 years ago, my wife and I bought a pickup and fifth wheel trailer, and the first trip out cost us $77. We went out 2 weeks ago, and it cost us $190. Now, a little while ago, they changed the way they charge on the ferries. That cars and oversized vehicles pay the same rate if you're up to 20 feet. My truck and trailer is 42 feet. Now, I can go down there with my truck, and I pay less than $50. But if I put the other 22 feet on of that trailer, it goes up 300%. Now, I think basically what you have there is a license for steal. The Australians say Ned Kelly was a gentleman. You knew when he was going to steal from you because he put a gun to your head. You guys do it a lot more subtle than that. Now, we used to make a number of trips out every year, but when it's $400 to go in and out, basically 2 trips a year is all we're going to go. I traveled up to Castlegar to where my daughter lives. It cost me $10 more for gas to travel from Powell River to Castlegar than it did for the ferry fare to get to Horseshoe Bay. I think that is absolute horse manure. I think someone is stealing way too much and that you need to be accountable, and we need to get rid of the Ferries Act and go back to where it belongs to the government. I have one question for you. With this Ferries Act, are you also over the interior ferries?
No.
No. And they're all free. As a matter of fact, on the Kootenai Lake Ferry, a 45-minute ferry ride, basically the same as we have at Salisbury Bay, and they have a big brochure, the longest free ferry ride in the world.
And they got roads.
Yeah, they can take the rest of the Elmo Pass, or they can go up to Revelstoke and the Golden and down around the other way. They do have other choices. We don't. You've always been willing to take the taxes that's come out of Powell River, and Powell River has paid one hell of a pile of taxes in the 40-odd years that I've been here. I think it's time that we started being treated like human beings instead of subhumans. Thank you.
Number 10.
My name's Nancy Bennett, and Mr. Skepsey just made my point. I think that we all would be in agreement that the ferries shouldn't be in the money-making business. It is our highway, the way that we get to and fro. And I have traveled several of these ferries, the inland freshwater ones. They're all free, no one's paid. Why can't they share the burden? It's all the government, no matter which commission you put it under, or which department. The money's all supposed to be coming out of the same pocket, isn't it? They should be sharing too.
Number 11.
My name is Jack. I don't think there's anything that's going to be said here tonight that hasn't been said 100, 1,000 times. But who's listening? I don't envy either one of you, your position. But you spent 25 minutes out of a 2-hour session telling us something that we couldn't care less about. Now, in your sojourn around the province, have you ever missed a ferry? Have you ever missed 3? Have you ever had to stay overnight to catch a connector?
Yes.
I doubt it. Anyway, Ray Sketchley touched on this. It is our taxpayers' money that is going in to provide the service for everything we have in British Columbia, including the interior ferries. We are bombarded weekly with our local paper on how much we are losing on our runs. Not one word about how much profit or loss you are making on the interior ferries. Is it a profit position there? I don't think so. The Kootenai Bay Ferry got a state-of-the-art ferry, 45-minute run, I forget how many cars it takes, but it's a state-of-the-art ferry, brand new. And they advertise in the summer, due to the heavy traffic, they will put on a second ferry, free. And as Ray mentioned, every one of those 14 routes, there is an alternate route by road around that body of water. We have nothing. It is our taxpayers' money. Give us a break. I don't think anybody is advocating a total free ferry system. We would have lineups like you wouldn't believe. But at least let the interior people, why hasn't anybody answered that question? Why are they free and we're paying through the nose? Thank you.
Tom, maybe I'll just respond a little bit to a couple of things. I want to be clear. Sheldon and I are the regulator of the Coastal Ferries Act. We don't run the company, we don't make the government policy. And I don't think you've seen, commissioners out visiting you that often. In fact, I'm fairly sure it hasn't happened very often at all. We offered to do this because we felt it's really important to, if we're going to be assigned the responsibility to consider ferry users' interests, to come and talk to ferry users and hear for ourselves, what those interests are and how the Coastal Ferry Act is affecting you. So, take the man's point. If my comments were things he already knew, I just want to, say, though, if we don't come, we don't get to hear. And we appreciate the opportunity to listen to you today.
Number 12.
Hi, my name is Jen Bowser, and I work for an industry that is affected directly by the ferries and the rising costs of the ferries. I heard you mention at the beginning something about the ferries contributing to the economic health of the communities they serve. Are they doing that? No. These ferries are not helping us one bit. Every time somebody decides not to come to Powell River because it's getting too expensive, the ripple effect through the community affects every person in this building. My other point is I'm a young family and we travel on the ferries for various reasons, including sport for our children, vacations and medical, all kinds of reasons. 4 years ago, the ferry cost around $70 return for us to go to Comox. We went to the island for our summer vacation and it cost us $145 return about a week ago. That was more than our food costs, our gas costs, and our camping in Tofino, which isn't cheap, by the way. So just the impact on young families is huge here, and I'd like to speak on behalf of those young families that it's just getting cost prohibitive for us to exist. So anyway, my thinking outside of the box is the most ridiculous and demeaning thing I've heard from the ferry in the media is that the issues they're having with their bottom line and with the traffic and low ridership, is that they're having these problems because of low ridership. The low ridership is because the fares are too high. I usually go over to Vancouver Island
around 5 or 6 times in the winter, purely for fun, and I won't be doing that this year. So that's affecting the communities over there as well. It affects so many industries in our community and on the island. So my outside-the-box solution is lower the fares, and we will ride the ferries more. Thank you.
13.
Thank you, number 13. My name is Daniel. I'm born and raised in Powell River. I actually worked for the ferries this summer, and I deliberately, very consciously came here because I knew I could provide information and talk about things that people might not otherwise know about. So I worked for the summer. I also worked for the ferries 3 years ago as a casual employee. And if you want to talk about the hard line, the bottom line, here's an example. Last time I worked there, you had a logbook, you recorded your information. Now we have 7 logbooks. And in all these logbooks, we record all the same information, and then we fire it off to paper pushers and never hear anything anymore. And we have a manager who isn't a bad person, but for the last month that I worked there, I didn't see a single time, because she only works for a few hours in the morning and then it's finished. And she gets paid triple or 4 times what I would be paid throughout the entire year. And it shocks me, and I know the loading procedures, I know how we do things and why we do things. There is no reason why we can't put people who are traveling for medical reasons at the front of the boat. And a lot of these people, increasingly, when I'm working at the till, are missing their medical appointments because the boat is continuously running late. And I'm writing in my logbook how many times that boat is late, and it's more and more often. And I would be curious, it's curious to know if we looked at previous oil crisis in the 70s when oil was expensive and the economy was crap. And we look at the fares and the percentage of changes and all that, how much are we paying now with all the same circumstances going on? And I think most of the money is disappearing towards the management. And we seem to have run this operation fine for 40 years without. So I want to make sure I cover all my points, but...
You done? Just get a little closer to the mic when you've got some more to say, because we're not catching you.
Nothing that has happened there now cannot still be done without this private structure. The only thing the private structure is doing is funneling an enormous amount of money that doesn't need to be spent into the ferry system. So I guess that's
Number 14.
I'm a fairly recent arrival, although I've lived and been dependent on BC ferries for probably around 40 years. I used to make many trips, almost every weekend, to my family on Vancouver Island when I lived in Chilliwack, because it was fairly reasonable, took a little bit of time. Now, I haven't seen my family in 3 years. They haven't come to visit me because it's just too damn expensive and too damn inconvenient. I've lived on the Gulf Islands, so it's the same sort of thing, except it takes a little longer to get to some of the Gulf Islands. I do appreciate your coming, like the other fellow. You mentioned one thing that struck me, commercial viability. I can't remember the exact term you used, but commercial viability seems to be part of the act. I think that needs to be scrapped. A long time ago, we had a rural-based premier by the name of Wacky Bennett. He created a ferry system that I think, no matter which side of the political spectrum you're on, I think Wacky Bennett created a ferry system that served the people of BC. Now we have a ferry system which which seems to be based on commercial viability, which will never work because we could never afford it. We bought a bunch of ferries built in Germany, which are supposed to be 30% more efficient, and in fact are 30% less efficient from my understanding. So there was a bit of a waste there. I don't know whether we paid the HST on those or not. I think it was waived. In any case, my main point is the commercial viability should be taken right the heck out of the BC Ferries Act. In fact, the BC Ferries Act should probably be scrapped.